My name is Melody Harper. I am 52 years old. I have spent most of my life as a middle school teacher in Portland, guiding other people's children through their formative years while raising my own son with everything I had. I thought I knew how to spot a lie. I thought I had seen every manipulation tactic in the book. But nothing prepared me for the day Stacy walked into my living room, held up a 3-month-old baby, and announced to everyone present that my son Adrian was the father. The room went silent. My brother stopped mid-sentence. My neighbor gasped. And Adrian, my quiet, kind, 26-year-old son, turned white as paper. In that moment, I watched his entire life collapse like a house of cards. Stacy stood there with perfect posture, her chin lifted, her eyes wet with calculated tears. She said she had proof. She said Adrian knew. She said he had been ignoring her for months. Before I show you how one accusation turned into a courtroom war and the exact moment the DNA results destroyed her entire story, tell me if you are watching this video, please like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you are watching my story from. The baby cried in Stacy's arms, a sound that should have softened the moment but instead made everything feel sharper, more real. My brother Mark shifted uncomfortably on the couch. My neighbor Linda clutched her coffee mug like it was a lifeline. Adrian stood frozen near the doorway, his mouth opening and closing without sound. Stacy pointed at him with one perfectly manicured finger while balancing the baby against her shoulder. "Tell them, Adrian," she said, her voice breaking just enough to sound genuine. "Tell them you know this is your daughter." I looked at my son. His eyes were wide, panicked, searching mine for some kind of answer I did not have yet. "I don't understand," he finally whispered. Stacy's face twisted into something that looked like hurt but felt like performance. "Of course you do not want to admit it now," she said loudly. "Not in front of your mother." The baby kept crying. Linda stood up slowly, mumbling something about needing to go. Mark stayed seated, staring at Adrian with a look I could not read. Stacy adjusted the blanket around the baby and met my eyes directly. "He needs to take responsibility," she said. "This ends today." Before I could even process what had happened in my living room, my phone started buzzing. Text after text. Notification after notification. I pulled it out of my pocket and saw a tagged post spreading across social media like wildfire. Stacy had posted a photo of the baby with a long caption calling Adrian a deadbeat father who refused to support his own child. She tagged him. She tagged me. She tagged half the people we knew. The comments poured in within minutes. People I had known for years were calling my son irresponsible, selfish, a coward. Strangers were sharing the post, adding their own judgments. Adrian sat on the stairs with his head in his hands, his phone face down beside him because he could not look anymore. "She posted this before we even talked," he said, his voice hollow. "She planned this." I scrolled through the post again, reading the calculated wording, the emotional plea, the public shaming. Stacy had built a narrative before giving Adrian a chance to speak. My hands shook with anger, but I forced myself to stay calm. "We will fix this," I told him. He looked up at me with tears in his eyes. "Mom," he said quietly, "I need to tell you something I have never said before." Adrian and I sat in the kitchen with the door closed, away from the noise of my phone and the judgment echoing from the internet. He wrapped his hands around a mug of tea he was not drinking and stared at the table. "The dates do not add up," he said finally. "I was not even in the state when she says it happened." I pulled out my calendar, the one I used to track everything, and flipped back through the months. Adrian had been on a work training trip in Denver for 3 weeks last spring. Stacy claimed the baby was conceived in late March. Adrian had been gone from March 10th through April 2nd. "She knows this," he said, his voice shaking. "She has to know this." I wrote down the dates carefully, my teacher instincts kicking in. Evidence. Documentation. Facts. "Then why would she do this?" I asked. Adrian looked at me with an expression that broke my heart. "Because no one will believe me," he whispered. "Everyone will think I am lying to get out of responsibility." Outside the kitchen, I heard footsteps. The door was not fully closed. Through the crack, I saw a shadow move quickly away. Stacy had been listening. The next morning, Stacy showed up at my door again, this time with red eyes and a trembling voice. She sat on my couch and cried in front of my sister-in-law, my cousin, and 2 neighbors who had stopped by after seeing the social media posts. "I just want him to be a father," she sobbed. "I am not asking for much. Just help with diapers, formula, doctor visits. I cannot do this alone." My sister-in-law Karen put a hand on Stacy's shoulder. "Of course you cannot," she said gently, then looked at me with disappointment. "Melody, you raised him better than this." I opened my mouth to defend Adrian, but Stacy spoke first. "If he does not step up, I will have to go to court," she said, wiping her eyes with a tissue. "I do not want to, but I have to protect my daughter." The women around her nodded sympathetically. Karen shot me a look that said, "Fix this." My cousin whispered something about responsibility. I felt my son's reputation crumbling in real time, and no one was listening to his side. That afternoon, a certified letter arrived. I signed for it with shaking hands. Inside was a formal demand from a lawyer. The letter was 3 pages long, printed on expensive letterhead, and filled with legal language that made my head spin. It demanded immediate financial support for the child. It threatened a formal paternity suit. It listed expenses, projected costs, and penalty fees if Adrian did not comply within 10 days. Adrian read it twice, then set it down on the table like it might explode. "She already had a lawyer ready," he said quietly. "She planned all of this before she even came here." I looked at the signature at the bottom of the letter, the law firm's name printed in bold. This was not a desperate single mother scrambling for help. This was a calculated attack. "How do I fight this?" Adrian asked, his voice breaking. "Everyone already thinks I am guilty. If I refuse, they will say I am a monster." I sat across from him and folded my hands on the table, thinking through every option. We could pay to make it go away. We could ignore it and let the court decide. Or we could do something Stacy clearly did not expect. "We ask for a DNA test," I said. Adrian looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. "Will she agree?" I met his gaze. "If she refuses, people will know she is lying." I called Stacy the next morning and asked her to meet me for coffee, just the 2 of us. She arrived 20 minutes late, carrying the baby in a car seat and wearing an expression that was half annoyance, half curiosity. We sat outside a small cafe, and I ordered 2 coffees while she settled the baby beside her. "I read the lawyer's letter," I said calmly. Stacy nodded, stirring sugar into her cup. "I did not want it to come to that." "Then let's avoid court," I said. "Let's do a DNA test." For just a second, less than a heartbeat, Stacy's hand froze mid-stir. Her eyes flickered with something I could not quite name. Then she blinked, and the mask returned. "A DNA test," she repeated, her voice rising just enough to sound offended. "You do not believe me?" "It is not about belief," I said evenly. "It is about facts. If Adrian is the father, the test will prove it, and we will support the baby fully. If he is not, this ends." Stacy set down her spoon slowly. She looked at the baby, then back at me. "Fine," she said. "But Adrian pays for it up front. And he continues paying support while we wait for results. Those are my conditions." Stacy leaned back in her chair, confidence radiating from her like heat. She had agreed to the DNA test, but only on her terms, and she knew those terms put pressure on Adrian. "He should be paying anyway," she said, glancing at the baby. "Test or no test, he is the father. I am just humoring you." I sipped my coffee and watched her carefully. She was too comfortable, too sure of herself. If she truly believed Adrian was the father, why had she hesitated? Why set conditions? "We will pay for the test," I said. "And we will wait for the results before anything else." Stacy's smile did not quite reach her eyes. The lawyer says otherwise. She stood, lifting the baby carrier with practiced ease. I will send you the lab information. Make the appointment. But if Adrian tries to back out, the court gets involved immediately. She walked away, her heels clicking against the sidewalk, and I sat there staring at my untouched coffee. Something about her reaction felt wrong. Too rehearsed. Too controlled. Over the next few days, I started paying closer attention to the details. The dates she mentioned. The timeline she had built. And that is when I noticed the first real crack in her story. I pulled out every receipt, every calendar entry, every email confirmation from the past year and spread them across my dining table. Adrian sat beside me, sorting through his work travel records. March 10th through April 2nd, he repeated, pointing to the printed itinerary. I was in Denver for training. There are hotel receipts, conference photos, everything. Stacy had claimed the baby was conceived in late March. The baby was born in early December. The math worked, but only if Adrian had been in Portland during that window. He had not been. I cross-referenced his credit card statements with the dates Stacy had given in her social media post. Dinner in Denver on March 22nd. Gas station in Boulder on March 29th. A coffee shop near his hotel on March 31st. Every transaction placed him hundreds of miles away. She has to know this does not add up, Adrian said, his voice tight with frustration. I tapped my pen against the table, thinking. Either Stacy genuinely did not know the dates, or she was lying and hoping no one would check. That night, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I opened it carefully. The message was short. You do not know the whole story about Stacy. The message sat on my screen like a live wire. I stared at it for a full minute before typing back. Who is this? 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally, a response came through. A friend. Someone who knew her before all this. She told me a different version months ago. You need to know the truth. My pulse quickened. I glanced at Adrian, who was still going through documents, oblivious. What version? I typed. The response took longer this time. She was not sure who the father was. She narrowed it down to 3 guys. Adrian was the one with the stable job. I felt my stomach drop. Do you have proof? I asked. Screenshots. Messages. But I am scared to get involved. She threatened me before. I sat back in my chair, my mind racing. This was not just a misunderstanding. This was strategy. Stacy had chosen Adrian deliberately, not because he was the father, but because he was the safest target. Can I call you? I typed. The 3 dots blinked for a long time. Then, not yet. Just keep digging. You will find more. The conversation ended, and I sat in the dim light of my kitchen, fear and clarity battling inside me. I had to dig deeper. I had to know the full truth. Over the next 3 days, I quietly reached out to people who knew Stacy before she appeared in Adrian's life. It was not easy. Most people did not want to get involved. But slowly, pieces started coming together. A mutual acquaintance told me Stacy had been seeing at least 2 other men around the same time she claimed to be with Adrian. One of them was a bartender named Kyle. The other was someone from her gym whose name no one remembered. Another friend mentioned Stacy had joked once about locking down someone's stable, because she was tired of guys who could not hold jobs. That phrase stuck with me. Locking down someone's stable. Adrian had a steady job, a clean record, a family who would pressure him to do the right thing. He was not the love of her life. He was the calculated choice. When I asked Adrian directly if he had dated Stacy seriously, he shook his head. We went out maybe 3 times, he said. It never went anywhere. She ghosted me after the 3rd date, and I moved on. When was that? I asked. He thought for a moment. January, maybe early February. That was weeks before the timeline she had given. I documented everything carefully. And that is when Stacy must have sensed I was onto her, because the next afternoon, she showed up at my house unannounced. I opened the door to find Stacy standing on my porch, arms crossed, no baby in sight. Her expression was cold, stripped of the crying victim act she had been performing for everyone else. "We need to talk," she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. I closed the door slowly and turned to face her. She stood in the middle of my living room, looking around like she owned the place. "I know what you are doing," she said flatly. "Asking around. Digging into my past. Talking to people." I kept my voice calm. "I am trying to understand the truth." She laughed, sharp and bitter. "The truth. The truth is your son needs to step up and stop hiding behind his mother." "The DNA test will settle this," I said evenly. Her eyes narrowed. "Stay in your place, Melody. You do not want to make this uglier than it needs to be." It was a threat, clear and direct. For the first time, I saw the real Stacy, the one who had been hiding behind tears and baby photos. "I am not backing down," I said quietly. She stared at me for a long moment, her jaw tight. Then she turned and walked out, slamming the door behind her. My hands were shaking, but I did not move. I had just refused to be intimidated. And I was not going to stop now. The DNA test was scheduled for the following Monday. Adrian and I arrived at the lab together, walking through the sterile hallway toward the small room where samples would be collected. Stacy was already there, sitting in the waiting area with the baby, scrolling through her phone like she did not have a care in the world. The process was quick. Cheek swabs for Adrian, the baby, and Stacy. Paperwork signed. Results promised within 7 to 10 business days. As we left, Stacy called after us. "This is not going to change anything," she said loudly. "He is still her father. The test is just a formality." Adrian did not respond. We walked to the car in silence, and I could feel the weight of waiting settling over us like a heavy blanket. The next 10 days were unbearable. Stacy continued posting photos of the baby online, tagging Adrian in captions that called him Dad, and implied he was refusing to be involved. Comments piled up. Judgment poured in. Adrian stopped looking at social media altogether. And then, 2 days before the results were supposed to arrive, we received a notice. A court date had been scheduled for the following week. Before the DNA results would even be back. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, plain and institutional, with fluorescent lights that made everything feel cold. Adrian sat beside me, his hands folded tightly in his lap. Stacy sat across the aisle with her lawyer, the baby sleeping peacefully in a carrier at her feet. When the judge called the case, Stacy's lawyer stood and painted a picture of a young mother struggling alone, abandoned by a man who refused to take responsibility. He presented the social media posts, the timestamps, the public accusations. He made Adrian sound like a villain. Adrian's lawyer, a quiet man named Mr. Brennan, countered with the travel records, the receipts, the timeline that did not match. He explained that a DNA test had been ordered and results were pending. The judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes, looked between both sides. "Has the DNA test been completed?" she asked. "Yes, Your Honor," Mr. Brennan said. "We are waiting for results." Stacy's lawyer jumped in. "The lab has been experiencing delays, Your Honor. We expect results any day now." The judge made a note. "Then we will reconvene when results are available. This case is postponed until confirmation of paternity." Stacy's face remained neutral, but I saw her hands tighten on the edge of her chair. She was stalling. After court, I went home and stared at the calendar. The lab had said 7 to 10 business days. It had now been 12. I called the testing facility and asked to speak to someone about our case. The receptionist put me on hold for what felt like an eternity. Finally, a lab technician came on the line. "We completed the analysis on schedule," she said. "Results were sent to all listed parties 6 days ago." My heart stopped. 6 days ago? I repeated. Yes, ma'am. Via email and certified mail. I hung up and immediately checked Adrian's email. Nothing. I checked my own. Nothing. Then I realized Stacy had been listed as the primary contact when she submitted the paperwork. She had the results. She had known for almost a week. And she had not said a word. I called Mr. Brennan and told him what I had learned. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. That is withholding evidence, he said quietly. If she knows the results and has not disclosed them, that is a serious problem. What do we do? I asked. We request the results directly from the lab and file a motion to compel disclosure, he said. If she has been hiding the truth, the judge will not take that lightly. I hung up and felt something shift. Stacy was panicking. And that meant we were close. The lab sent the results directly to Mr. Brennan within 24 hours. He called me that evening, his voice careful and measured. I have the results, he said. But I want to go over them with you and Adrian in person before the next court date. We met him at his office the next morning. He spread the documents across his desk, official letterhead and DNA analysis charts that looked like something out of a science textbook. The test is conclusive, Mr. Brennan said. Adrian is not the biological father. Adrian exhaled so hard it sounded like he had been holding his breath for weeks. I closed my eyes, relief washing over me so powerfully I thought I might cry. Stacy received these results 6 days before we did, Mr. Brennan continued. She knew. And she continued pursuing the case anyway. Why would she do that? Adrian asked. Mr. Brennan leaned back in his chair. Probably hoping you would settle out of court before the truth came out. Or that you would not follow through with requesting the results independently. What happens now? I asked. Now we go back to court, he said. And we let the judge decide what happens to someone who knowingly made false accusations. I looked at Adrian. His face was pale, but his eyes were clear. I want everyone to know the truth, he said. Mr. Brennan nodded. They will. Over the next few days, Stacy's behavior changed. She started texting Adrian directly, messages that swung between apologetic and desperate. Maybe we can work something out privately, one text said. I do not want this to go back to court. Another message read, I just want what is best for my daughter. We do not need to make this a big thing. Adrian showed me every message. I told him not to respond. Stacy called me twice. I did not answer. She left voicemails asking me to be reasonable, and suggesting we could move past this without drama. It was clear she knew the results were about to go public, and she was scrambling to control the damage. On the day before the next court hearing, she sent one final message. I am sorry. I made a mistake. Can we please just drop this? I stared at the words on my screen. A mistake. As if destroying my son's reputation, dragging him through public humiliation, and threatening legal action was just an accident. I typed a single sentence back. The truth does not disappear because you are sorry. The next morning, we walked into court with the DNA results in hand. And this time, there was no escape for Stacy. The courtroom was quieter this time. Fewer people in the gallery. Just us, Stacy, the lawyers, and the judge. Mr. Brennan stood and submitted the DNA results as evidence. The judge read through them carefully, her expression unreadable. Then she looked up at Stacy. Ms. Dawson, the judge said. According to this analysis, Mr. Harper is excluded as the biological father of your child. The probability of paternity is 0%. The room went completely silent. Stacy sat frozen, her hands gripping the edge of the table. Her lawyer leaned over and whispered something to her, but she did not respond. Ms. Dawson, the judge repeated, her voice sharper now. Did you receive these results prior to today? Stacy's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her lawyer answered for her. Your Honor, My client was under significant emotional distress and may have misunderstood the documentation. The judge's eyes narrowed. That is not what I asked. She turned to Stacy directly. Did you receive notification of these results more than a week ago? Stacy looked down at her hands. Her voice was barely a whisper. Yes. The judge set the papers down slowly. And did you continue to pursue financial claims and public accusations against Mr. Harper even after receiving confirmation that he was not the father? Stacy did not answer. She did not have to. The silence was answer enough. The judge leaned back in her chair, her gaze moving between Stacy and her lawyer. Ms. Dawson, she said slowly, you stood in this courtroom and allowed your attorney to argue a case you knew was false. You allowed a young man's reputation to be destroyed publicly while you were fully aware he was not responsible. Explain yourself. Stacy finally looked up, her eyes red but dry. I was scared, she said, her voice shaking. I did not know what else to do. You could have told the truth, the judge said flatly. Instead, you chose to weaponize the court system and defame an innocent person. Stacy's lawyer tried to interject, but the judge held up a hand. I am not finished. She turned to Adrian. Mr. Harper, you have been publicly accused, legally threatened, and emotionally tormented based on a claim this court now knows to be false. Do you wish to pursue any further action? Adrian stood slowly. His voice was steady, stronger than I had heard it in weeks. I just want my name cleared, he said. I want people to know the truth. The judge nodded. Consider it done. She turned back to Stacy. All claims against Mr. Harper are dismissed with prejudice. You are barred from making any further accusations or contact. If you continue, you will face contempt charges. Stacy's face went pale. Her lawyer whispered something urgent, but she just sat there, staring at the table. The consequences had finally arrived. Within hours of the court ruling, word started spreading. Adrian's friends began sharing the truth. People who had condemned him online started quietly deleting their comments. But it was too late. Screenshots had been saved. Stacy's original posts, the ones where she had called Adrian a deadbeat and demanded public accountability, were circulating again, this time with context. Someone posted a side-by-side comparison. Stacy's accusation on one side, the court dismissal on the other. The comments section exploded. People who had supported her were now angry, feeling manipulated. Others who had stayed silent were now speaking up, sharing their own suspicions. Stacy's social media accounts went dark. She deleted the baby photos. She deleted the accusatory posts. She tried to erase the evidence, but the internet does not forget. Someone had archived everything. I watched it unfold from my living room, my phone buzzing with messages from people apologizing to Adrian, people who had believed Stacy without question and were now horrified by the truth. Adrian sat beside me, scrolling through the flood of support and vindication. It feels weird, he said quietly. Like I should feel good, but I just feel tired. I understood. Justice did not erase the damage. It just stopped the bleeding. And then, in the middle of it all, someone else came forward. A man named Kyle posted a public statement on social media. He explained that Stacy had told him months earlier that he was the father of her baby. He had been paying her money privately, believing her story, until he saw the court case involving Adrian. I asked for a DNA test too, Kyle wrote. She refused and threatened to take me to court if I did not keep paying. When I pushed back, she cut off contact completely. His post went viral within hours. People started connecting the dots. Stacy had not been confused or mistaken. She had been running a calculated scheme, targeting multiple men and hoping at least one would fold under pressure. Other people commented, sharing their own stories of Stacy's manipulative behavior. A former co-worker, an ex-boyfriend, a roommate who said Stacy had a history of bending the truth when it suited her. The portrait that emerged was damning. Stacy was not a desperate single mother. She was someone who had been willing to destroy lives to get what she wanted. By the end of the day, Stacy had deactivated all her social media accounts. Her phone number was disconnected. She had disappeared from public view entirely, leaving behind only the wreckage of her lies. Adrian looked at me across the kitchen table. "Do you think she will ever admit what she did?" he asked. I shook my head. People like that rarely do. 2 weeks later, we received official notification from the court. All claims against Adrian had been formally dismissed. The judge had included a written warning in Stacy's file about making false accusations and misusing the legal system. If she ever attempted something similar again, she would face immediate sanctions. Mr. Brennan called to congratulate us. "This is as clean a victory as you can get," he said. "Adrian's record is clear. The court made it explicit that he was falsely accused. That will matter if anyone ever questions this again." Adrian thanked him quietly, but I could tell the relief was still sinking in. For weeks, he had lived under the weight of a lie. Now, the weight was gone, but the memory of carrying it remained. He started seeing a therapist the following week. I did not push him to talk about it, but he mentioned it one evening over dinner. "I need to figure out why I let this get to me so much," he said. "Why I felt so powerless." I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "You were not powerless," I said. "You stood up for the truth. That takes more strength than people realize." He nodded slowly, and for the first time in months, I saw something like peace in his eyes. The case was over. Stacy had been exposed. Adrian was free. But it was not quite finished yet. Adrian slowly started rebuilding his confidence. He returned to work without the cloud of accusation hanging over him. His co-workers, who had been awkwardly distant during the case, began treating him normally again. Some even apologized for believing the rumors. He started going out with friends again, laughing more, sleeping better. I watched him come back to life, piece by piece, and felt a deep gratitude that we had fought for the truth instead of giving in to the pressure. One evening, he came home from a walk and sat down beside me on the couch. "I have been thinking," he said, "about everything that happened." "What about it?" I asked. "I used to think being quiet and polite would protect me," he said. "That if I just kept my head down and did not make waves, people would see I was a good person." He paused. "But Stacy almost destroyed me because I was too afraid to speak up loudly." I nodded. "You spoke up when it mattered." "I did," he agreed. "But only because you pushed me to. You did not let me disappear." I felt my throat tighten. "You are my son. I will always fight for you." He smiled, and it was real. Then his phone buzzed. We both looked down. It was a message from an unknown number. My stomach dropped. It was Stacy. The message was short. "Can we talk? Please. Just once." Adrian stared at the screen, his jaw tightening. I waited, letting him decide. "What does she want now?" he muttered. He handed me the phone. I read the message again, then scrolled up. There were 2 more messages sent earlier that day. "I know I messed up. I just want to explain." I looked at Adrian. "Do you want to respond?" He shook his head. "No. But I want to know what she is going to say." Against my better judgment, I typed a response. "Say what you need to say here." 3 dots appeared immediately. Then a long message came through. "I am sorry. I was scared and desperate, and I made terrible choices. I know I hurt you. I know I hurt your family. I do not expect you to forgive me. I just want you to know I never meant for it to go this far. Can we please just forget everything and move on?" I read it aloud to Adrian. He laughed bitterly. "Forget everything. She wants me to forget that she tried to ruin my life." I typed a response, my fingers steady. "The truth does not disappear because you want it to, Stacy. You made your choices. Now you live with them." I hit send. Then I blocked the number. Adrian watched me, his expression somewhere between relief and sadness. "Thank you," he said quietly. I nodded. This chapter was finally closed. Over the following months, life returned to something resembling normal. Adrian continued therapy and started dating again, cautiously but hopefully. I went back to teaching, grateful for the routine and the noise of middle schoolers who reminded me that most problems were not as complicated as they seemed. Our family slowly rebuilt the trust that had been fractured during the ordeal. My sister-in-law Karen apologized for doubting Adrian. My brother Mark admitted he should have asked more questions before judging. Even the neighbors who had whispered and stared eventually moved on to other topics. Stacy never contacted us again. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she had moved to another state, though no one knew the details. The baby, I hoped, was being cared for by someone who loved her. That child deserved better than to be used as a weapon. Adrian and I had dinner together one evening, just the two of us, and he raised his glass. "To the truth," he said. I clinked my glass against his. "To the truth." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, and then he spoke again. "Do you think people learned anything from this?" he asked. I thought about the messages, the apologies, the quiet admissions from people who had rushed to judgment. "Some did," I said. "But most will forget until it happens again." He nodded slowly. "Then I guess it is up to us to remember." I am sharing this story not because I want revenge or sympathy. I am sharing it because lies like Stacy's destroy lives every single day. They destroy reputations, relationships, and the quiet trust that holds families together. Adrian almost lost everything because someone decided he was an easy target. He almost gave up on himself because the weight of public shame was too much to carry alone. But we fought back. Not with anger or cruelty, but with patience, documentation, and an unwillingness to let lies win. The DNA test did not just clear Adrian's name. It exposed a pattern of manipulation that had hurt other people too. It forced Stacy to face consequences she had spent months trying to avoid. And it reminded me of something I tell my students every year. The truth might take time. It might require effort and courage and the willingness to stand alone when everyone else has already made up their minds. But the truth always finds its way to the surface. If you are watching this and you have ever been falsely accused, or if you know someone who has, I want you to remember this. You are not powerless. You are not alone. And you do not have to accept someone else's version of your story. Stand up. Speak up. And trust that the truth, quiet and patient as it is, will win in the end. If this story resonated with you, please let me know in the comments. Share your own experiences. And subscribe for more stories.